Alright, going live. Hey guys, I'm Jordan Fromer. I believe in hunting hard, hunting smart, and having a fun time while doing it. And shooting limits, well, that's just the icing on the cake. I revel in the journey just as much as the successes it brings. From ducks to dogs to decoys and guns, we'll be teaching tactics, strategies, and what it takes to get the job done. Load up and to game. This is the Duck Gun Podcast. What's going on, guys? I'm Jordan Fromer from Duck Gun Chronicles, and I got my co-host alongside me, Elliot from Freelance Duck Hunting, and our guest tonight is Corey from Sportsmen Taxidermy. How you doing, Corey?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on kind of short notice. We had planned on having you on, but then we had to shuffle around because our schedules, and you were able to jump on last second. So really, really appreciate you being able to be on here. And this is a topic I'm really interested to hear and talk about, just kind of your side of the taxidermy.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot to it. I don't really know where you'd want to start. I would assume probably with the hunting aspect of it, go through the full genre.
Sure. Well, before we do that, let's kind of just give people a little bit of background on yourself. Like, you know, as I said, you're Corey. Just go ahead and, you know, just a little brief history, and then we'll jump into the taxidermy.
All right. Well, I'm Corey. I've been hunting ducks since I was probably 12. Really ramped it up with my little brother probably about 6 or 7 years ago. Get out every chance we get. I try to hunt ducks at least 30 to 40 times a year. Geese, if I can do the same, about the same. But yeah, just that's my hunting background as far as that goes. Taxidermy background, I work at Sportsmen Taxidermy out in Belton, Missouri. It's a taxidermy shop that's been in business for, I think, going on 23 years now. I've been working there for about 5 years, full-time there about 2 years. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So that's your full-time profession then?
Full-time profession.
Very cool.
Just taxidermy. Yes, sir.
That's great.
So kind of at what point did you realize that you wanted to do taxidermy?
Well, honestly, what got me into taxidermy was the price of taxidermy. I've got 4 kids, so money was at a premium, and I hunt so much, you know, I'd be getting these beautiful mallards, you know, canvasbacks, pintails, all this stuff that I'd always wanted on my wall, and I honestly couldn't afford to mount as much as I wanted. So I just kind of took it into my own hands and learned it. Went from there, and then found the shop that I work at now, became friends with him, and just kind of grew upon it until I'm to the point where I am now.
Awesome. And you do have quite a few mounts on the wall behind you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got a older dead hang I done, and I think one of the first mallards I had mounted, I think, is directly above me.
Awesome.
So,
What was the very first piece that you mounted personally?
very first piece that I mounted was it's a mallard, and it's just suspended by a string. My girls call it the pterodactyl. It didn't really turn out very good. So, but I keep it around so that I can see, you know, my progression, where I started at. It's like with any job or anything that you're doing. It's nice to see where you came from to be able to gauge where you're at. So I went from, you know, putting birds together that looked pretty much like toys to I just recently competed in my first show in Missouri at the Lake of the Ozarks, and I took second on a blue-winged teal that I brought. So.
Wow.
Awesome.
It's definitely nice to be able to see your own progression. Yeah.
Was that like a fully flocked? I assume you wouldn't mount. Or, I mean, I don't know.
It was about as fully flocked as you can get a blue-winged teal in our area. I had gotten lucky. I never kill a blue-winged teal after maybe the first week of normal Missouri duck season. But we were at a power plant lake, and this guy came in the last week of the season. Not fully plumed, but right there to the point where it was really difficult to tell that he wasn't. I don't really have him on me right now. He's at the shop. Otherwise, I'd love to show him off. But he's a good looking bird.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, in northern Indiana, we don't get like teal late season very often. And a couple seasons ago, I did shoot a green wing, which is probably more common to shoot late season than a blue wing. And I've never in person seen fully flocked blue wing.
Yeah, it's really difficult to see the fully flocked blue wings in our area. You see them more in the like the southern states. They'll get them. Louisiana. We'll have some shipped in from there. We've got a pretty loyal customer that makes trips down to Mexico quite a bit, and he's brought us in some cinnamons and some blue wings, and that's where you have to really go to get the fully plumed blue wings, is Mexico or Argentina. But you can get them, here locally. It's just very difficult, very, by luck of the draw. So
I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. My thinking is that if I'm going to have something mounted, I want to have the best looking duck that I can shoot. At the same time, like, I wouldn't mind having a blue wing teal mounted, and I don't mind having it mounted how it looks when I shoot it, which is not fully plumed. I think it still would be a cool mount just because it doesn't have its full plumage on. What do you think about
the blue
that?
wing teals? I've done them before for customers that kill them early season, and they all look like hens, and there's really nothing wrong with it. The only real issue with that is pin feathers, because they do take so long for their feathers to mature, get fully plumed out. You end up with a lot of pin feathers, and that's really going to degrade the quality of the mount that I can give you from the get-go, because I lose a lot of those feathers during the process of mounting it. And they carry a lot of blood, a lot of oil inside those feathers that will leach out. There's really nothing I can do about the pin feathers leaching out. So you're not going to get as high of a quality of a mount if you do that. But yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it, especially if you pick a pose that you can kind of hide some of the problems with the blue wing or the early season bird. It's just, to each his own. Some taxidermists may refuse to do an early season bird like that because you're going to take it, you're going to show it off to your friend. And if it's not a quality bird, then it kind of goes back on the taxidermist. So it's one of those things. He didn't have control over the quality of the bird. And it kind of looks bad on them. So a lot of guys won't do it. I'll do it for my more educated customers that can explain, this is why I mounted it. This is, maybe it's my kid's first duck. Maybe this is my first blue wing. This is the first duck that my dog brought back. There's not a problem with it. It's just the quality that it's going to turn out.
Yeah. Can you get a little more of an explanation of what the pin feathers are exactly and where they're located?
Pin feathers actually can be all over the bird. Most of the time, you're going to see them on the birds that you shoot are going to be in the breast, on the scapulars, the back feathers. And what those are is every year the duck molts. And when the duck molts, he produces new feathers. And waterfowl are kind of unique in that they molt all their feathers at the same time, especially their flight feathers. And then they grow back. Now, when you're shooting your early season birds, especially a younger bird that produces the feathers a little late, you're going to have what's called pen feathers. And you can recognize them because either they're going to be right at the base of the skin and it's going to be black and it's going to look like it's black, but it's actually a blood supply in there. Or like if you ever killed a turkey, it's really evident on a turkey, like a fall bird, where you can see that the feathers kind of encased in like a fingernail type of substance around it, so that feather doesn't completely open. So you've got a bird with a bunch of basically closed feathers. So that really makes them kind of look thinned out, kind of raggedy looking. But if you've ever plucked a bird, you'll definitely know the difference between a normal feather and a pin feather.
Okay. That's interesting. Now, what about with when the gadwall come through? Like, I've shot some really beautiful gadwall, but I don't know. Beautiful to me in my hands, maybe only half plumed out.
Yeah,
just because
we kill a lot of gadwall around here. It's hard to get a good gadwall around here. There are some. You want to really look for the rusty feathers on their scapulars, the middle of their back. You want those to extend down, kind of the same way that a pintails extend down over the back. And then you also want to look at the head. Now, a normal gadwall that comes through early season, he's maybe not completely mature, but he's fairly mature. He's going to have just that grayish brown head. But then when they get really mature, they're going to have an iridescence that kind of follows a line similar to what like a widgeon would have. And he's going to get a purple iridescence that like a mallard would kick out. That's when you really know you've got a fully plumed gadwall. And they turn out phenomenal. They look really good.
Yeah, they're beautiful ducks. I don't know that I've ever seen one with that iridescence on the head in my hand.
Yeah,
maybe I just haven't recognized it, or do you think that they don't see them much?
It's probably a little bit of both. I mean, if you shoot them you really got to kick it around kind of like a mallard, how it'll go black to purple to green. If you do the same thing with that gadwall, you'll really see it. I've got one behind me, but I'd have to move everything. But he's definitely got the purple, kind of, like I said, the same general shape as the green swatch that would be on a widgeon. But they'll get that purple.
So is it best then to wait as far in the season as you can to get a duck that you want mounted?
Yeah, if you can wait until mid-season or late season to start picking your birds out for the taxidermist, you're going to end up with a lot better product. But I mean, you'll get, a lot of guys don't shoot canvasbacks. You may get that one surprise flock of canvasbacks that comes through early season that you want to mount because you may never shoot another one. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you can wait, I'd suggest waiting. The later the season the bird, the better the quality of the bird is going to be.
So everybody shoots mallards pretty much. So you wouldn't want to do one like until, the last section of the season.
Yeah, if you could possibly wait till January to kill your mallard, you're going to have a phenomenal mallard because the gray feathers, they kind of go white. And if you can get a really white mallard, that's, he's a late season bird. He's seen it all. It's kind of like shooting, your 12-point buck. He's been shot at all season. He's made it down somehow. He survived. You were the one that killed him, and he's fully plumed out, so he couldn't be any prettier of a bird. So if you could wait until the last day of the season to bring me a mallard, you're going to have probably the best mallard out of anybody else in the shop.
I was thinking about that because I'm going to have, a couple mounts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, because I've only shot like 3 canvasbacks in my life. And so I was thinking about the prospect of having something like a canvasback if I was lucky enough to harvest one this year. But then I was like, you know what? I think I would rather have on my wall something that I shoot all the time because when I look at it, it's going to have so much more like year-to-year meaning to me than something I've only shot once.
Absolutely. But it's one of those things that one bird that you shot once, every time you look at it, it's going to flood back that memory. You're going to be able to account that day a lot better than you would had you not had that mount because he's going to bring back that memory. And plus, I mean, that once in a lifetime trophy, it's nice to have that, you can go out and shoot another mount.
Yeah, where you can mount a mallet anytime you want, but a canvasback, I'm going to have very few chances in my life to get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love I think everybody probably tries to mount this one as well, but pintails are awesome mounts.
Pintails, yep. Pintails make a tremendous mount. They're another bird that in our area, it's hard to get a good plumed out pintail, but you can. If you can shoot them late season, like if there's a reverse migration, a slight reverse migration, you can get a lot of good pintails in the area, and you can kill a really good one. I get a lot of really good pintails out of the Cheyenne Bottoms area. For whatever reason, it holds some tremendous pintails.
Yeah, it does. I was out there one time with my dad, and man, we didn't. They're hard to decoy, and we weren't concealed enough. But we watched wave after wave after wave of pintails for like 4 hours, going over us. I've never seen so many pintails in my life. It was unbelievable.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We shot some last year that in October. That weren't that bad. No, they weren't fully plumed, but the drakes had their head coloring and had a sprig that wasn't too bad. For October, they were nice looking birds.
Yeah, I think some of the best pintails I ever got was actually on a day where prior to it, I'd only killed 2 canvasbacks. We had a group of 4 of us out there, and we had shot a 4-man limit of canvasbacks earlier in the day. Then late in the day, for whatever reason, just a huge flock of mallards and pintails, which we were at a lake that almost never gets pintails. I think we killed 1 pintail on that lake prior to that. And we came out of there like bandits. We had some beautiful pintails, some gorgeous canvasbacks. It was just hunt of a lifetime.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
What state you say that was in?
Missouri.
Dude, I go years without even seeing a canvasback.
Yeah. Killing my first canvasback, I'd probably gone 10 years without killing one. Well, without even seeing one outside of going to like the local, neighborhood lakes for whatever reason. They seem to always hold all the birds you want. But yeah, I've only had 2 years where we actually killed pintails. My brother and I, or pintails, I'm sorry, canvasbacks. My brother and I had killed a pair, and then we went 3 or 4 years without seeing any more. And then we had that one giant flock of them come in where we all limited out on canvasbacks, and then kind of like a freak thing. We had one canvasback and a flock of redheads. We knocked him out. Did pretty good on
that's
that.
cool.
Oh,
That's
wow.
cool.
It sounds like a case of mistaken identity for the canvasback, just
Yeah.
hanging out with the redheads. I gotta actually have a canvasback story. So this was my first season hunting canvasback a few years back, or hunting ducks a few years back, and I was with one of my buddies, and we're floating back to the boat launch, end of our hunt, and we have this duck on the river like 20 yards from us, and it's a canvasback, and we're floating, and it's a river section that we'd never hunted before, and so we didn't know if it was in city limits or not, and my buddy thought, this is in city limits, like don't shoot, and then later on we looked and it wasn't, and I could have shot a canvasback, and I've never shot one. So.
Oh man. Yeah, that's kind of like my Moby Duck story from last year. So we saw last year, I'm pretty sure it was a farm duck hybrid, but it was a mallard drake, and then just the 4 or 5 flight feathers on its wings were totally pure white on each side. And have you ever seen like that, Corey?
I've seen a couple. They're really rare. I've seen more geese. We've killed. I've had can't remember what you call it. Quill lake goose with the giant. It's Canadian. He's got the giant white patch on his breast.
Yeah.
We've mounted one of those. A few blonde mallards.
This thing was just beautiful. I mean, just a perfect mallard drake with just those 4 or 5 flight, those feathers on the tip. Someone like they had dipped it in white paint. And my buddy and I, we both had our limit of mallards. We had 5 each, and we were just sitting there in our decoys. And this duck comes and lands in the decoys, and he's sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
We can't shoot this thing. We've got our limit. Well, we weren't. I mean, so technically, if it's a hybrid of any kind, it doesn't count towards your pure mallard drake limit, is my understanding, which I was later told that. Some form of a hybrid, we would have been able to shoot it, even though we had our 5 mallard drake limit, because we still had our 1 bonus duck. But we just sat there, and while the thing sat in the decoys for about 20 seconds.
Oh man!
Go off, and we actually saw him a week later in the same marsh. But that's like, man, I would have loved to have had that bird.
Yeah, hybrids are definitely another cool type of bird to get mounted.
Oh yeah, they turn out pretty good. They're kind of trouble for me, because then I have to figure out exactly what it's closer to, like as far as body wise and head wise.
Yeah.
It can make for some trouble, but then you end up with more of a custom bird. I have a little more time, and I charge the same amount. But if I had the choice between mounting a normal mallard or a hybrid, I'm definitely going hybrid every time.
Yeah.
Nice. So kind of stepping back a little bit, let's kind of go through, kind of where we're headed at the beginning, like, the best practices and starting from hunting, what should guys be looking to do if they're going to plan to mount a bird?
Well, if you're going to plan to mount a bird, and you know that you're going to mount that bird right off the get-go, first you want to, you want to use a smaller shot. You don't want to be going out there trying to kill ducks with T shot or something like that. That's just going to tear them up. And then I can do a lot of repairs, as far as feet or wings go, but preferably if you want, and it's always the opposite for customers, but if you want a flying bird, try to bring me a bird that's got wings that aren't broken. And if you want a standing bird, obviously I need legs that aren't shot up. If you can preferably go out and retrieve the duck yourself as opposed to sending your dog, you're going to have a little bit less damage. Not to say that your dog, you could have the best dog in the world and he's not tearing up birds, but he's definitely going to crunch some feathers, even if he's not trying to. Keep them clean with blood. I can still remove the blood, but the less blood on the bird, the better it's going to turn out to in the long run, because that's less chemicals I have to use to remove the blood, less scrubbing I have to do on him. And then care for the bird. I had a gentleman actually bring in a couple mallards that he had brought in, that he got in the field, and he was doing a 2-day set. He just threw them in the cooler with nothing on them. Well, those birds were garbage by the time I got them. So if you can, keep that bird separate from your other birds, keep them out of the bottom of the boat, don't throw them in the mud. Try to care for them until you get them in the freezer, and you want to get them in the freezer as soon as possible. And you want to get them to the taxidermist from the freezer as soon as possible too, to kind of alleviate any issues you might have with freezer burn. And then if you can bag that bird too prior to putting it in the freezer, like the thickest bag you can get, like if you can get a 4 mil Ziploc bag and try to remove all the air, that's going to be really good. The seal meal bags, if you can control it and you can not have it crush that bird, that's going to be a lot better too. Because the seal meal bags, for whatever reason, have those the checkering in them, and that kind of transfers out to feathers, and it's really difficult or impossible to get that out if you really pressurize or really vacuum those birds down. Other than that, I mean, common sense stuff. Like if you're not going to be able to get to the taxidermist for a while and you put them in your freezer, try not to just do them in that straight out pose, because your wife or your kid might get in that freezer and knock that bird, and you can break that head off or a wing off or anything like that. So try to tuck the head under the wing if possible. And yeah, I mean, just common sense. Just really care for the bird. Prior to the safer and the cleaner you can be with that bird, the better that bird's going to be when it leaves my shop.
How long can it be in your freezer? In my freezer?
Well, that just kind of varies. If the makeup of the bird, for whatever reason, some birds are fattier than others. The fattier the bird, it seems like the less freezer burn you're going to get. So like geese, they'll last longer than, say, a really lean teal. But if you can get them in a bag, you're pretty well guaranteed to get at least a year out of it, as long as it's, not exposed to the elements. Elements. As long as it's not just open in your freezer with no covering. You could probably get a good year out of it. I did some sea ducks just recently for a gentleman that he had killed in 2015, and those turned out phenomenal. So, I mean, it's it's really hard to predict how that bird's going to come out, but the quicker you can get it, the better. You don't want to leave something in your freezer for 5 years and then bring it to me.
Yeah. But 2 or 3 months is no problem at all then.
No, 2 or 3 months, not a problem at all. Not a problem.
Okay.
So what's the longest that you've ever had one that you did end up mounting?
Probably I had a 5-year-old canvasback that got brought in, and he was so freezer burn. I did everything I could. I soaked him in a solution to try to bring some of that freezer burn out. I injected his feet. I injected his wings. But the primaries, basically the wrist bone of the bird where the last feathers come out, that was so freezer burn I couldn't open it. So I had to just basically make him look like he's banking in really hard. It was the only way to really pull that mount off. But yeah.
So did it turn out okay then? Or?
It turned out okay. It's not really, definitely not something that I would call, my best work because of, the circumstances around it, but it turned out okay.
Or maybe it was your best work just to get it onto a wall. Right.
Yeah.
Just didn't look like it.
Yeah. Well, if I ever shoot a mallet or if I ever shoot a pintail, for sure. If I couldn't at the time afford it, I mean that thing's gonna have to wait in the freezer because I'm getting that mounted at some point.
Right. Yeah, and it's one of those things. Even if you don't bring it to me, you can talk to some of your other taxidermists that are local, and a lot of those guys would rather have you keep it in their freezer than in yours because they can kind of control it a little bit better. They're not going to have so much damage out of it. So maybe if you could just get them like a small down payment, and like I've worked with guys that I know, I'll let them bring me, $100 here and there, make small payments, and you can talk to your local taxidermist too about that. And I'm sure that's something that they'd be willing to do, just to, if they can keep their quality coming out of their shop, that's what most people would prefer. So if they can care for your bird, they would prefer that, I would imagine.
Awesome.
So Jordan, should we do the lightning round? And I want to get into his process from start to finish. Obviously, what should we do? Go into that now, or should we do lightning round and then back to it?
Yeah, we can do lightning round. But I actually had one more question, kind of going back to something you said earlier about, dogs retrieving birds, and so if you were to lose some feathers from a dog retrieving it, is that the end of the world, like as far as taxidermy goes, or?
Not at all. There's a lot of different poses that you can put the bird in to kind of draw your attention away from it. If he loses a lot of back feathers, I can put him belly out. If he loses a lot of belly feathers, I can have him banking real hard. You can put standing poses. We can, put him on the water like he's swimming. There's a lot of options. I mean, if he loses a lot of head feathers, that's probably not a bird you're going to want to mount, because there's not really a whole lot I can do to hide the head. But, back, belly, some wing feathers, I can definitely work with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd say one thing about it, you kind of said, and you mentioned you'd rather not have people, like, to get the best mount, not have their dog retrieve it. But for me, I think personally, like it being part of the memory, that I'd love it if my dog was to retrieve the duck I mounted. Just
I'm
as far as like a memory, goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 3 dogs, and I've got one that I hunt with majority of the time. She's got a real soft mouth. I don't have a problem mounting any of her birds. But then I've got my younger male. He's kind of got a rougher mouth, and I know if I send him out on it, he's going to be crunching it, because he's kind of a doofus. He'll be walking through the marsh, and he'll just be, forget what he's doing, lose his grip on the duck, so he throws it back up, catches it again. It's not really going to turn out very well, but just depends, I guess, too, on your dog. But I mean, yeah, the memory of your dog bringing it back. I've got a mallard back here that's actually mounted with the picture of my dog bringing it back, and that makes, it helps with the memory. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that too.
Awesome. All righty, let's go ahead and jump into the lightning round. Lightning round is quick questions, quick answers. So let's jump right into it. Okay. What kind of gun do you shoot?
Versamax, Remington.
12 gauge or 20 gauge?
12 gauge.
And do you shoot 3-inch shells or 3.5?
I shoot a lot of divers, so I shoot majority 3.5s.
I've never, I don't think I've ever heard that as a reasoning for 3.5, but.
Oh, well, for whatever reason, I get a lot, the divers, when I get cripples and I'm on the lake, if there's any wind, they're taking off on me. I seem to have more instant kills with the 3.5s, especially because the divers, I try to get them to decoy into me. And as steel, you're not getting the shot cloud that you get out of lead, you're getting the shot string. So the more pellets you can put through that bird, obviously, the cleaner the kill. So that's my theory on it.
So is the 3.5s you going with a higher speed or more shot then?
More shot. You get more shot, heavier load. I'm normally shooting 3.5 Federal premiums. I almost swear by them. Winchesters I've just always had a lot of issues with. But yeah, it's more of a shot issue as opposed to speed.
What's the speed on those shells?
Ooh, off the top of my head, I couldn't really tell you an honest answer, but I think it's probably somewhere around 1250. But I'm not positive.
Yeah. Okay.
And then do you what size shot do you shoot for ducks?
Number 2s is what I prefer.
And are you a number 2s all around for geese as well, or?
I'll shoot number 2s at geese, but I like to shoot Bs or BBs at geese if I can.
Alrighty. And beard or no beard?
Beard.
Face paint or no face paint?
I like face paint.
Full choke or modified?
I shoot a modified. If I'm shooting geese, every now and then I'll throw in the full.
Am I forgetting any, Elliot?
Oh, I think that does it.
Alrighty.
Let's jump back into I'm really curious on the process, the actual ins and outs of what you do from the time that you pull a bird out of the freezer.
Okay.
What's that process like?
So from the time I pull the bird out of the freezer, I've got about 24 hours for it to thaw. So after that, I take them down. I make a breast incision, like say on a mallard. You've got that line. Well, that dark line normally is never on his breast. It's right there on the base of where his neck should be. So I'll start at that dark line. I'll bring it all the way down to his vent. Probably the best word for it. And then from there, I'll just skin him out. I'll clip the wings, clip the legs, pull the body out. And then I'll just skin out the wings. I'll skin out the legs. And then I'll work my way to the head. And then I'll make an incision from the bill all the way around so I can just kind of relief all those feathers. And then I'll work it back over the head, pull the neck out. Then I have to flesh it. And that's probably the most difficult. To flesh it, I have a wire wheel. And I'll just work that until I can get all those feather quills clear of any fat. As you know, mallards and divers carry a lot of fat on them. Geese, an insane amount of fat. So I just work all that fat out of the quills as best I can. And then I'll wash it in some Dawn dish soap to kind of degrease him. And then I'll put him in a lacquer. And the lacquer will just kind of degrease him even further. And he's going to kind of eliminate some of that dead smell. So you're not going to have any issues with bugs. From there, I figure out what your pose is, what the customer would like on his pose. I take my body. It's basically a commercially bought foam body. And then I modify it to fit whatever pose that it is he's going to be in. I'll measure out my neck because You can get in a book and it'll tell you, every mallard's going to have a 7-inch neck. Every gadwall's going to have a 5-inch neck. That's not necessarily true. So I try to match everything I do to that one specific bird. And then my head, I'm using a fake head. Sometimes if the customer wants a real bill, I'll use the real bill. But for the most part, it's fake head, fake bill. I set my eyes in clay, build my eye ring. And then from there, it's just wiring. I'm wiring my legs. I'm wiring my wings. I'm mating them to the body. The neck, I'm inserting the neck and the neck material. Then from there, I'll sew my bird shut after everything's kind of fairly posed up. And then I'll come back at the very end. I'll do my head attachment, and then I'll glue all my feather line up to my bill line, set my eyes. And then from there, once I get them in your pose that you want, it's probably up to a week, depending on humidity. I'll be going in every day and I'll be touching that bird, trying to make sure those feathers stay where you want them. Keeping your alignment, because as the skin contracts, it's going to kick some feathers out. So I just have to go back in there and groom those feathers down until it's completely dry. I like to let my birds dry for about 3 weeks, but I want to be with them, on top of those birds for at least a week, if not 10 days or so, just to make sure that everything stays where it should be. And that's basically it. Habitat, there's 100 million things you can do with habitat. So that's all a whole nother thing. You can just do your bird on a stick. I can make him just attached to a wire so that it looks like he's just suspended on your wall. Or we can build some intricate habitats, a nice rock with some ice dripping off of it. Or everybody wants a water scene. Water scenes get pretty expensive just because of my material costs, but water scenes always turn out tremendous. So
how much freedom do the customers have in, I assume they have a lot, but on a normal mount, are you getting them and they tell you the pose and you just do what you think and have some creative micromanaging exactly everything they want on it?
It really depends customer to customer. I can tell you that if you come in and you micromanage that, if you have all your birds going one way on your wall and you want this bird to be going the same way, that's absolutely fine. But if you give me a little bit more freedom, you're definitely going to end up with a better bird, because, you may remember that wing being perfect, but he may be missing a couple feathers where his speculum is. So if I put him the opposite direction of what you asked, he's going to turn out a lot better. But if you ask me to do it, I may give you a call and be like, hey, this is what's going on with that bird. Would you like to pitch it up? But if you can't, it's your bird. I'm not going to give you a product that you don't want. So, but yeah, the more freedom I get, the better quality of bird you're going to get.
So on one thing I'd say about mounts that I guess I hadn't seen them, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but are the dead mounts kind of a new kind of trend, like the one kind of behind you?
Yeah, that's like just a whole limit right there. The dead mount is kind of came onto the scene probably about 5 or 6 years ago. They got really big. You don't see them a lot in competitions because they can't be judged. So a lot of guys don't put a lot of time into them because they're not going to compete with them. So a lot of your taxidermists are going to have a lower quality on their dead hang. I kind of like the dead hang myself, so I put a lot of time into them. But yeah, it's a fairly new thing. Yeah, you can get more of your colors out of it, especially if you're going to build like a scene. The dead hang's a pretty good thing to go with.
Now, why can't they be judged?
Because when the judging rules are that it's supposed to be like the bird or the animal is alive. You don't want to have a dead animal because a dead animal. If you're going off anatomy, what's the real anatomy of a dead animal? It could be anything. How was he shot? How was what happened to him when he died? So you can have a broken wing in there, and it's impossible to judge it. So really, when you bring a dead hang in to get judged, all they're doing is judging your head attachment. So there's really nothing they can do there. So like your normal judging, what they're going off of is anatomy, is about 90% of your score, and then your artistic merit. Like, is this something that bird really does? Is this, will I see this in nature? Like, you're not going to have a dabbler standing the way a diver would stand. Like they don't stand the same. They stand totally opposite because the makeup of their body is different. So it's there's a lot of different aspects to the judging aspect. But yeah, as far as what I got a little off topic there, but as far as the dead hang goes, it's a fairly new concept. I really like it. You can do a lot of things with it, especially if you're going to have a lot of birds mounted.
Yeah, I definitely think those are cool as well.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Do you have a favorite style of how to mount a bird typically?
I don't. I like more action poses. I like I like things that I see. Like when I go in and I can do whatever I want. I like to see, if I see a lot of mallards when I'm hunting, they're banking in and they're just. I like to recreate what I see. You have other guys that, every bird that they do is just banking real hard to the left, banking real hard to the right. I like to do what I see. So if I can keep it different, nobody wants to get burnt out of their job. So I don't want to do the same exact pose every single time. So I can't really say I have a favorite, but more action poses, the more emotion you can put into that animal, I think the better the quality. So that's what I kind of shoot for.
And I would imagine making new, different aspects to what you're doing probably keeps your job fresh and is one thing you really love, I would assume.
Absolutely. You get to think a lot. Yeah, it is an art, and the more you can really put into it as opposed to doing like cookie cutter pieces, the better it is, mentally on you to go in and do it every day.
So as far as you're kind of saying, you pick different styles every once in a while. So do you have a lot of customers that come in and just say like, surprise me, or just whatever? Or...
My returning customers, they're always like, oh, whatever you think's good, and those are the ones I like. So yeah, so I give them. You'll get if you give me a little more artistic freedom, you're definitely going to get I'll go a little further with it. You know what I mean? Because I can put my time into it and enjoy it, as opposed to you just want that bird on a stick banking to the left, that everybody wants.
And once you actually pull the bird out and it's thawed, how long does it take you to mount a typical?
The actual mounting process, I've probably got 4 hours in the skin work and prep, and then I've got probably 3 hours in the finish work. So I can get a bird done in about 7 or 8 hours. Your real time at the taxidermist, though, is your dry time. That prep work, that 5 minutes a day every day. That's where your real time comes in. And that's how a lot of taxidermists get backed up, because they have all these things on their wall that they have to care for. And then you're waiting on guys to come pick up. So you can't really progress. You can't put another bird on that wall until this guy comes and picks that bird up. That's kind of the main issue we run into as far as time.
And for those of you that are watching or listening, Sportsmen Taxidermy, you guys actually ship. So you don't just have to work locally. You guys can service anyone, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've shipped to, I think, 36 states or so. So yeah, we're very versed in that. We don't have a problem shipping really anything. We had to ship some swans one time. That was a problem. We had to make removable wings, but other than that, yeah, we don't have a problem shipping.
How do you package that? How do you package it? Like a mallard?
Well,
how would you package it and send that?
Bubble wrap.
Well, obviously, yeah, bubble wrap. He's going to be secured to his base, and then I'm going to build a frame around him, and I'm going to secure whatever his base is to that frame. And then I just try to keep him suspended in the middle as best I can. Okay. And then best is overnight, because they seem to take better care of their stuff. And the less that other people are handling it, obviously, the less issues you're going to have with damaging and the shipping process.
Now, what about the shipping to you? If someone, like, let's say from Indiana, wanted to ship you a bird,
yep.
What would he do? What would you suggest how they handle it?
You want to get that bird completely frozen. He's going to be in his plastic package, and then you're going to, if you can get one of those little styrofoam coolers that you can get in there, put some ice packs in there with him, and then just do overnight if you can. Overnight gets pretty expensive, so as long as that bird's insulated pretty well, you can do 2-day shipping, which probably cuts your shipping costs in half. So that's what I normally recommend. So.
And do you guys have a website, or how do people typically contact you?
We've kind of got a rudimentary website, Sportsmen's Taxidermy. You can look in there. Unfortunately, we're so busy, we don't really keep it updated too well. Facebook and Instagram, though, you can get on there, and I normally try to keep a lot of what I'm doing posted. Like the sea ducks, I just posted those sea ducks. We built a big ornate rock wall. Unfortunately, it was too big for me to get in all my pictures, because it's going to take up like. I think he's putting it in a finished barn. It's going to take up 12 feet by 20 feet. So there was just no way for me to be able to take a whole picture of it, but it turned out pretty good. But
you'll have to come join us on Facebook on Fellowship of the Duck Guns, and I'd love to see your pictures over there.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Awesome. So do you ever have like customers bring in like old mounts?
Yeah, actually, Steve, the gentleman that I work with that owns Sportsman's Taxidermy, he had a duck brought in from the very first year that he was commercially doing taxidermy. Still looked really good. It was just the gentleman hadn't cared for it, so it had probably a 1/4 inch of dust on it. So we just had to clean him off, that kind of stuff. But we'll get somebody will bring in Grandpa's deer. They'll want it redone, so we'll just mount it in the same way that they had it, put the old antlers on there, that kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll get quite a few fish. Everybody's fish fades out because they keep it in the sun, that kind of stuff. We do a lot of insurance work.
This one behind me, for those that are just listening, I got my grandpa's mallard mount behind me, and it's the beak is black, so that's not normally what they look like, and the feet also are like light yellow, and it's probably, I'm gonna say it's probably maybe 30, 40 years old. I have no idea, honestly. It's been there my whole life, and I'm 29. It was in his basement my whole life.
Yeah, I would imagine too. If you touch his feet, they're probably going to feel kind of oily, kind of waxy too.
Yeah.
What that is just wicking the oil out, and that old of a mount, he's going to have like a wrapped body. So somebody took their time, built it out of jeweler's tool. So that kind of stuff I like to keep around, for memories. Your grandpa's duck and all that. But I've done the same thing with actually my ex-wife's grandfather. He had killed a banded mallard that was in pretty bad shape. So we just remounted him completely, put the same band on him, just kind of rebuilding the memory for him. We can do all that.
Cool. So when you have to rebuild it, is it basically the same process you did originally, where you just take everything off and then put it back on?
It depends case by case. Most of the time, once the duck's mounted, I've just got to do a new duck. But like if he's got a band on there, I can redo that band. I can recreate whatever pose he was in. Your deer, most of the time, like if there was a fire and you really want that same deer, I can try to reuse that mannequin. Most of the time I can't though, but I can get that commercial mannequin in the same pose, put your antlers on him. I can restain the antlers if they need to, that kind of stuff. Like I can try to get it close to what you had.
Mm-hmm. Can you change the pose in it? My dad's got a mule deer that's like, this thing has so many points. I don't know, like 17 or whatever. And the guy who did it, I don't like the pose he put him in. He kind of, his head's dropped. I think it would look so much cooler if the head was up and it looked alert, and I didn't know over the years, once my dad passes on, hopefully he'll live for another 20 years, but in the future, that would be a cool thing to have. Is that something you can change the pose of?
Not really with the skin.
Okay.
The pose wise, like if it was some eye work or some nose work, I could definitely work on that. But the pose completely, I would have to get another mule deer cape, which I could get, and then I just put them on a new form, and I could reuse your dad's antlers.
Okay, so the antlers would be the only thing that would stay with, that would be able to save on something like that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. This is interesting stuff.
Awesome.
Well, what you think?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good place to wrap up. You want to go ahead and kind of give everybody the lowdown on your Facebook page and Instagram, what they are, so they know where to find you, and I guess
absolutely
your website as well, even if it's not your most common source to find you. But
the website is SteveMorrisTaxidermy.com, or you can just Google Sportsman's Taxidermy and it'll bring you to the website. There's also, unfortunately, there's 2 Facebook pages for the Sportsman's Taxidermy. We're working on getting that resolved. But you can go to Sportsman's Taxidermy on Facebook, or Corey Burnham, CORYBURNAM, on Instagram. And I keep my Instagram basically most updated. Like you can get my day-to-day stuff there.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah, you can get in contact with me from all that. The shop's phone number is 816-331-5171, and then taxidermy@outlook.com is our email. So you can get in, any social media or phone or any of that. You can Google us. We'll come up. You can get in contact us any of those ways.
Sweet deal. And we'll add Corey to the Facebook group, guys, if you want to find him there as well. And check him out there as well. And we really appreciate you coming on. Really interesting topic, that I didn't know honestly a lot about, and a lot of the finer details.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. Let guys know what to look for whenever they're bringing stuff to their taxidermist. I appreciate that. Anytime I get to educate somebody on something like that, makes my job a little easier.
Well, it's obvious that it's your passion too, which is fun to talk about what you do and you love to do, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we got for this week. I'm Jordan from Ducking Chronicles, Elliot from Freelance Duck Hunting, and Corey from Sportsmen Taxidermy, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.